I'm Kellye Testy, the President and CEO of the Law School Admission Council, and together with my co-host Dean Ken Randall from iLaw, we're really pleased to welcome you to the Live with Kellye and Ken show. And today, the day before Constitution Day, we're featuring civic education in law, a very timely topic as we all think about the role of law and democracy in our society today. So I am very honored to introduce to you four terrific deans from law schools who have joined us today for this conversation. And I'll introduce all four of them. Let me begin by welcoming Dean Verna Williams from the University of Cincinnati.
Thank you, Kellye.
I also am very pleased to welcome Dean Elena Langan from Touro's Law School. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you.
Third, I'm thrilled to welcome my good friend and colleague, Dean Danielle Conway, now from Penn State Dickinson, and welcome, Danielle, to your new post there. And then I am also likewise very delighted to welcome Dean Donald Tobin, who's serving on one of LSAC's key committees this year. Dean Tobin's from the University of Maryland, and so thank you, Don, for joining us.
Thanks, great to be here.
You bet. Deans, we want to say a special word of thanks to you because we know you all have very busy schedules, and we also know that our viewers today are eager to hear from your perspective a bit about law school and its role in civic education. So with that introduction, Ken, let me thank you for being a great partner in this effort and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kellye, and wonderful to be with you. Want to thank our deans. This is such an exciting time in legal education, and particularly in mid-September. So thank you for taking the time. And, we have a record number of viewers today, pushing 1,300. So, we appreciate everybody who's listening in. Good place always to start is with definitions. So I'm going to go to each of the four deans, and I'll go in alphabetical order, starting with Dean Conway, and ask you to give us your definition of civic education.
Well, thank you for that. I would define civic education as preparing oneself and those around you for citizenship, how you interact with others to learn about the governance systems that bind us together.
Great, thank you. Dean Langan.
Thank you. I really see civic education as involving three different aspects. One would be civic knowledge, the other would be civic skills, and the third is civic disposition. So we're talking about knowledge about the government entities and the interplay, how you become a responsible citizen. The next is having the opportunity to participate in the process. And then the third is developing the disposition to want to be part of the democratic process and using the skills that you've developed.
Great, thank you. Dean Tobin.
I don't know that I want to repeat what my colleague said. When the answer is right in law school, you sort of go on, but I would just add on to the part of, an ability to engage with the society around you. That's an important, we think about learning, but we also have to think about doing and how we engage with people around us.
Good. And Dean Williams, I don't know what's left, but I'd love to have you enhance what's gone so far.
That's the luck I have of being a W in the alphabet. I would just add that it's important. I think that Dean Conway set the stage by saying it's preparing oneself. So we're not limiting our definition just to students, either students in undergrad or high school. We're talking about people. And I think it's important for everybody in our society to be armed with, as Dean Langan says, the skills, the knowledge, and the disposition to participate in our society.
Great, thank you. Dean, we'll stick with you, so we'll reverse the order a little bit. Tell us what's going on at your law school. Is it in response to any shortcomings that you've seen either before or particular things you want to work with in your current student body?
Well, we have had, and for the last couple of years, we've had discussions between the College of Law and the Department of Political Science at the College of Arts and Sciences here at the University of Cincinnati to talk about what can we do in partnership to increase people's understanding about democracy. And to that end, we have a program right now, a Law and Society program, where students actually are undergraduate students are taking courses from law professors about a variety of different topics. We're looking to expand that to a major. We've also put on programming about voting rights, which is something that's been open to the entire public. And then in terms of the thing I mentioned when we talked about definitions of civic education, we have entered a partnership with the municipal court here in Hamilton County, which is where Cincinnati is located, to do something called the Help Center. And that is about helping unrepresented litigants in municipal court. Something like 98% of people that are having to go to court dealing with issues like evictions and debtor collections are unrepresented. So they come to court, they have no idea what to expect, they don't know that they've even been in a trial. And what happens at the Help Center is that there's a lawyer and students and volunteer attorneys that can help explain the process. That can help them prepare for what they're about to go through, and even just help translate the documents that they get from the court. In addition, the Help Center has been working on changing the forms that people get so that they can understand what they're getting, like a summons. Summonses have been written in something like, Old English from the 13th century. Now we're updating those things. And there's an online platform, something that's akin to Quicken that folks are going to be able to use. So I see that very much as part of our efforts towards enhancing civic education, particularly in the sense that it's helping them to understand the court system, understand the processes that they're about to undergo, and in that way, help to improve the stature of the court and the legitimacy of the court.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And it's showing really, starting out how lawyers play such a role in really giving students that started understanding that, that mission as part of being a lawyer. Dean Tobin, I guess of the 4 deans you've been at in your current deanship, maybe longer, we have some newer deans to theirs. So when you think over the time that you've been at the University of Maryland, what has changed in this area? Is this an area where you thought the school wanted to do more? Are there shortcomings you wanted to address?
Well, I think, we're in Baltimore, which is a great place for a law school and a lot of exciting things going on, but also a place where we have a lot of ability to contribute to the community. And I think we've looked at the community civic education as part of our mission. So it's about education and engagement. And so there are ways in which we can help educate people in the community. So we do a lot with high schoolers. We help with moot court programs. We have we had 8th graders come in and try Goldilocks to see if she was rude. But there are ways to bring people in to think about things. And then the second part is how we interact with the community around us and how we have our students engaging in that community. I think all of the law schools here have clinical law programs, but it's one of our priorities. So we're in the community all the time in a little bit of the ways that Dean Williams mentioned. Allowing our students to engage and try to make a difference. So if you think about, I've been dean almost 6 years now, you think about what that has been in a lifespan in our country, students are wanting to be more civically engaged. They want to be going to law school to make a difference. And I think law schools around the country are responding to that call from students. How do we help them? They actually want to be civic and engaged citizens. And how do we help them through the law become engaged citizens?
Right. Wonderful.
And I use citizen very broadly. I don't mean a United States citizen. I mean a person here in the country.
Sure. Thanks, Donald. Our 2 deans who have recently moved to other deanships. Dean Conway, let's start with you. Are there things from your previous school that interest you to now bring to Penn State Dickinson Law?
So Ken, it's an incisive question because it really lends to the notion that civic education and civic relationships are geographic. And so coming from most recently the University of Maine School of Law in Portland, Maine, I was dealing with a rural community. And so there were many programs that were focused on rural communities. There was a large immigrant population, so a lot of civic engagement on immigration issues. And then here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, still central Pennsylvania, still a rural place, your civic advocacy is geographic. And so as lawyers, we really need to serve our communities, not only as leaders, but also learners of what is so critical in these geographic environs. So I would just add to the list, in Maine, I focused with our students on rural relationships and trying to rebuild a commitment and a recognition of how the rule of law plays a part in everyone's life. And here, similarly, with the opioid crisis in both of those places, how we as a law school and members of the legal community can be responsive to those crises.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. Great insights. Dean Langan, how about you? As you look at a new leadership role moving from one school and now to Touro, what do you have in mind when you think about your vision for the school?
Well, it's interesting because coming from Boise, Idaho, I thought there would be a huge difference in now being on Long Island in New York. And really what I have found is that both schools really have a very strong commitment to being a part of the community and ensuring that our students have a sense of duty to the community in which they serve. So here at Touro, one of the unique features, though, that we didn't have the opportunity to do in Boise was that we have a public advocacy center, which is right here in the law school. It's called the William Randolph Hearst Public Advocacy Center. And what we do is we provide space to a variety of public interest organizations. So we have Breaking Barriers, which is a student-run program that works with community leaders here at the law school. We have the Center for Restorative Practices. We have the Empire Justice Center. So all of these offer opportunities for the students to work directly with public service agencies that provide education to the community, regardless of whatever the areas of interest may be, and also really educate high school students and others who are in need of legal services. We have the typical street law program. We have students who go into high school, work with the high school students. We also are located directly across the street from the United States District Court. So we participate in their Justice Institute, where we bring high school students to the federal court for a week-long program, and they're able to participate in a trial and gain practice as far as that goes, learn about what their rights and responsibilities are. We focus a lot on high school students as they're getting ready to turn 18 and are now have new rights, new responsibilities that they will have, and how to appropriately exercise those in order for their own protection and also to help the communities that they will be joining as adults.
Wonderful. A lot of things going on at your law schools. Hey, I want to turn the table a little bit and to Dean Testy, want to ask you a question. You know, for people who are viewing, students who are viewing, who are thinking about law schools, what kind of opportunities would you highlight for someone who's thinking about any number of careers after college, but what law schools can provide?
Sure, Ken. It's a great question, and already I'm getting a number of questions coming in today from applicants. There's a big LSAT this coming Saturday, so everyone's focusing upon law school right now, which I love to hear. And I just want all the applicants to know that what we see from you is a real desire on your part to find a career where you can really give back to society, really follow your passion to make the world a better place. And I just think that law school is what opens that door. Almost no matter what your interest is, it gives you that opportunity to not only care about the right things, but actually to learn the skills and have the capacity to make change and make a difference. And graduates of law schools go into all areas of law and business and public policy and are able to link that desire for furthering democracy, furthering justice with their careers. So. And I think it's a great choice. I'm sure our deans have additional thoughts about that from their own perspectives too.
Yeah, thank you, Kellye. It's wonderful. When you speak to law students and you ask them why they originally wanted to come to law school, so many say, I wanted to come to law school to make a difference, to make an impact. Dean Conway, I see you nodding your head first. And how do we keep that feeling going? It's great to come in with it, but how do we as educators be sure that students leave thinking the same thing?
So I have a very unique position on that question. I've served 27 years in the military. I've defended the rule of law. And so the Constitution is so meaningful to me on so many levels because this is a mighty nation. It's a great nation, but the rule of law is fragile. And we desperately need students to know that the rule of law is about keeping us together as a community, whether it be local, municipal, state, national, or international. This is how we can avoid crises. This is how we can avoid conflict, furthering the rule of law. And so I think just keeping focused on that and getting students to realize they have a place in it is how we are going to do amazing things in this country and around the world.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We had a program a couple times ago about leadership and the unique role that lawyers and law students play in leadership. Dean Langan, if you had students who you're speaking with during the admissions process and they tell you, I want to be mayor of New York or governor of New York or senator or even president, how would you link legal education and people who want to make a difference even in a political career?
Sure, and we know that political careers are one of the motivators that students identify that cause them to go to law school. The skill set that you learn in law school is transferable to such a wide variety of professions. And when it comes to politics or any type of public service position, as lawyers, we develop an ability to identify problems, analyze those problems, and come up with solutions. I think that's one of the unique features about law school, is that it really trains you on to have an analytical approach to problem solving. And that obviously can be used in any variety of professions, so that we see students who come here that want to get into politics. At my prior institution, we had several that served in the state legislature while they were going to law school, and some who ran for political office after law school. My son, who is a law school graduate, says he wants to be president. So we know that this is really a career or a legal education opportunity that can lead to any number of careers where you need to exercise judgment, sound judgment, and also be able to analyze, react quickly, and solve problems.
I just want to interject here. The other thing, in addition to the skills that Dean Langan identified, is you would enter a profession that is about, that the ethos of the profession is service. And that it's also, the other thing is that we serve as guardians of democracy. I mean, sort of picking up on Dean Conway's point. So you get all these skills, but you also you are entering a profession, and that is something that we make clear to our students from the very beginning. In the first week, before classes begin, they go through orientation, they learn how to brief cases, they get a sense of what to expect in the classroom, and at the end of the week, on our professionalism day, they hear from somebody respected in practice or on the bench, about what it means to be a lawyer, what it means to be part of a profession. And we do something that's sort of like the white coat ceremony in medical schools, where we actually, they pin themselves with a Cincinnati law pin, so that they all, they're all sort of walking in together, they are beginning their professional lives. And so that's a big part of what we are doing here at the College of Law, inculcating the students with the values of the legal profession, in addition to giving them the skills that will be needed when they get out and practice. And of course, as I alluded to before, giving them lots of opportunities, whether in the corporate setting or criminal law or domestic violence, all kinds of opportunities to put those skills to practice.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dean Tobin, I want to ask you, particularly given the location of your law school so close, and I know you're actually in DC today, but given your location, are there ways that you try to connect geography with, civic education for students?
Sure. I mean, look, there's great opportunities in many city centers. We're lucky to be in a pretty major city, so there's lots of opportunities for students to work in the Attorney General's office and the mayor's office and the governor's office in Annapolis. But But there's also, we're an hour from DC. So our students have opportunities in Washington, DC, to do externships and internships. But what I really would leave with students is, one of the things about law, and we've all sort of touched on it, is it's the pathway to help you make a difference in the world. And you'll choose where that is. And you mentioned leadership. I mean, I teach a law and leadership course at the law school, and partially I do it so that students can have the tools to use their law degree to make a difference. And that may be running for office. That may be, I spent 8 years on Capitol Hill. It was a very influential part of my life. But they're going to have tools by going to law school that let them make that difference. So I think we have a particular geographic advantage. So our students who are interested in the legislature can go down. We can come, fairly easily to the Security and Exchange Commission or to government. But what I really would say to students is if you happen not to be close to Washington, D.C., try to figure out where those opportunities are, because those are really transferable skills that will really help you in almost anything you do in law. And I would be, my view is that the time I spent on Capitol Hill helped me in my deanship more than probably any other skill, because I learned to deal with people and I learned how coalitions make a difference. And that's part of what a well-rounded legal education will teach you to be able to do.
Wonderful. Thank you. As we think about legal education, and I guess it's about 20 years now, maybe more, that legal education has spent a lot of time on clinical education and experiential. And some of you have mentioned some of the clinical opportunities, but Dean Williams, we'll start with you. As we think about even academic credit earning activities, do you put this type of education as part of clinical education?
Yes, we do. If you're speaking of externships, we have clinical opportunities where students are actually representing clients. We have externships where people can, we make externships available to every single student who wants one. So we are lucky. We also are in a nice sized city. We've got big law firms, we've got corporations. In fact, Cincinnati is home to more Fortune 500 companies per capita than any other city. And we're close to, we've got the city government here in Cincinnati. We're close to the state capitol, about an hour and a half away from Columbus. That would be a long way to go for an externship. But in any event, we do provide those opportunities for students, yes. Yeah. And they're important. It's important for the students can try different areas without making a big commitment. They can try it for a semester and get a sense of what it means to clerk for a judge, or what it means to do research for somebody in a corporate setting.
Yeah, thank you. As we think about the curriculum for law schools, there are definitely some courses that connect with this topic more than others, constitutional law. But just as we think about the curriculum, and we want to be sure in each and every course, we think about legal ethics, right, and professionalism. Should we also be thinking about how civic education fits in each and every course? Dean Conway?
I think absolutely, and we probably hit it implicitly, if not explicitly. But to launch off of what Dean Tobin suggested, I believe that you can hit this by explicitly identifying opportunities to convey leadership skills to students, because we will not always have a scenario where you're doing very skill-based work. Sometimes the lawyer is called upon to be the decision maker. And it's those skills and virtues like integrity and honesty and the ability to weigh opportunity costs to come to a decision that actually helps the community. And it may not help everyone. And this is the beauty of the rule of law. If we all believe in it, then we all believe in a decision that helps the community at large. And if we train people to think about that in every course, I think we are doing a great service for the profession.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's inspiring. Dean Tobin, when you think about, for example, the business or tax curriculum, where you have a familiarity, is there a role even in that part of the curriculum as opposed, say, to the constitutional law area?
Well, I guess you were just giving me a softball on purpose. Look, there's lots of things that drive the world, and hopefully ethics and morality drive the world, but so do money. And if you don't understand how the tax code, influences policy decisions in the United States, you are not going to get things done. There's lots of periods in the history of this country where we've used the tax code as a way to help people to engage. You know, some of our most significant low-income support right now is through the low-income tax credit. But similarly on the business end, you know, that is, we are a capitalist society, and so understanding the rules and regulations and how things work and how to make companies more efficient, how to make sure we're engaging in environmental compliance. I mean, a huge issue right now with clean air and clean water. There are so many opportunities to engage, and that's really why I went back to that original part about what we're training you to do in law school. I actually think it's less constitutional law and a lot more criminal law, environmental law, energy law, tax law, where you're going to have opportunities. I mean, look at what the abuse by banks in this country did to our economy. You know, the people who are understanding banking law in a way that's moral and just are incredibly important for both civic engagement and for all of these principles of rule of law that we've just been talking about. There is plenty, no matter what your area of law is, I could find a way to articulate to you a huge pathway of civic engagement in that area.
Great. Well, I'm glad I asked you about tax law, Ben. That was wonderful. Dean Williams, I want to ask you a question. If you're talking to prospective law students and say they have a year left even as undergrad, and they're going to ask you questions like, if I'm interested in making a difference and being the best law student I can be, are there things that you would actually think they should do before coming to law school? Any types of courses they want to be sure they have or activities?
I would want them to take courses that would require them to write and to engage in analytical thinking. I think they can't get enough experience writing and writing big papers, writing short papers, just learning how to really hone their writing skills and their research skills. Because the other thing, I mean, we talked very generally speaking about the kinds of skills that we impart to students. But when you get out, what the bread and butter of the lawyer is writing. It really doesn't matter what area that you're going to go into. You're going to have to be able to write well. You're going to have to be able to explain things well. And so I would say don't avoid courses that require a paper. Do those courses. Take those courses. And use every opportunity you can to improve your writing skills.
Yeah, great. I want to shift a little bit here and ask you, maybe less about just training law students, but the role of legal education in helping to train the citizenry, right? And that's whether it's just outreach or even, there are popular degrees now that are called Masters of Jurisprudence for non-lawyers. You have a real increase, a real uptick in people who don't necessarily want to be licensed as lawyers. So Dean Conway, speak to us about the role of legal education in really helping the broader community to understand about the law and citizenry.
So every citizen should know that the rule of law belongs to him or her. It is not exclusively the province of the lawyer. So if you are a person who is interested in finding out about a particular area of the law, I would say that many law schools would offer you an opportunity to sit in on that class just to pique that interest and to satisfy it. And then we have non-JD programs like you talked about. So one-year programs, here's the other end of the spectrum. If you want to get a general understanding of the law and say how it affects your small business or how it might affect your pop-up business, it might be a very good investment to do that 1 year instead of 3 years, say in a compliance program, so that you can learn about how you can represent yourself without necessarily having to inquire after full representation of a lawyer, especially if you're proactive in that representation.
Sure. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Dean Langan, I want to ask you, in terms of the role or responsibility of the law school to train non-lawyers about civic education, what do you think?
I think that law schools, because we are the purveyor of the law, we're the ones who really have the bulk of knowledge in that area, that we have an obligation really to share that knowledge, whether it is working with high school students, whether it is working through any of these other public interest organizations, all of those activities, but also hosting programs at the school. We've participated in sort of a street law type clinic activities for adults, whether it relates to immigration issues, advising individuals of what their rights are. We also had a program with pregnant mothers as to what their rights, their obligations were, things of that sort. I think that we can break down what that information is in small, understandable pieces for individuals who are not trained in the law. And I think that's part of our obligation. Once we become lawyers, we have that duty to assist those who may not have the ability to have access to lawyers who can explain it to them. And to the extent we have the ability within our own schools to do that, I like to see that happen, and also train our students to have that sense of responsibility once they graduate from law school to likewise do the same within their own communities.
Yeah, wonderful. Deans have a lot of events going on at law schools. So I want to ask each of you, have you ever had a speaker who you think epitomized really a role model for those who are committed to civic education? Or I'll give you even a flip of that. If you had to invite one speaker or could get any one speaker, who would it be? Who in a sense should be a role model for us? Dean Williams, I saw some nods, so I'll turn to you first. Who's a
Sure.
great role model
I was
for us?
actually thinking of our Constitution Day speaker from last year.
Yeah.
Robert Wilkins, who's on the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. I think of him as a primary example of civic engagement for a number of reasons. I mean, this guy, he's a friend of mine from law school, which is why I called him this guy. He was a litigant in a case in Maryland involving a policy, a racial profiling case. He was coming back from Indiana, a funeral for his grandfather. He got stopped by the police because he was a black man driving late model Cadillac. And he was successful we litigated the case with the help of pro bono assistance of Hogan and Hartson, and was successful in getting that policy eliminated. He was a public defender, then was a partner at a law firm, and during his time as a partner at the law firm, he worked to build momentum and create coalitions to establish the Smithsonian's Museum of African American History and Culture, which, it was a pipe train, really, that started, the vision of it started in the early 20th century. An idea that had been percolating and percolating, but could never get any traction. And Robert decided, in the mid to late 90s, I'm going to make it happen. I want to make this happen. And so he worked in coalition with members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, and was able to successfully make that a reality. And then finally, he's working on a book. When he came to speak, he wanted to talk about the Representative Bingham, who was one of the framers of the 14th Amendment. And he skillfully talked about the 14th Amendment and related it to his own family's background, from an ancestor who was an enslaved person, and her lack of rights to today. So, just in that one person, you see, civic engagement, the rule of law, the importance of the rule of law, as well as, carrying out that message to other folks. So I think he epitomizes civic engagement for me. He's a wonderful role model and a great person besides.
That's wonderful. Will you have a speaker tomorrow? Will that person be able to?
We do. And our speaker tomorrow is going to be New York Law School's Professor Melissa Murray, who also happens to be an MSNBC commentator and a co-host of Strict Scrutiny, which is a podcast on the Supreme Court and the legal culture surrounding it. So I'm expecting that to be great too. So, I'm not trying to I mean, last year was fantastic, and so Melissa's got some big shoes to fill.
Those are some great speakers. Yeah. Dean Conway, in the two schools where you deaned, who is a great role model, or who could you invite if it could be anybody?
So I loved Justice Andrew Mead of the Maine Supreme Judicial Court. He would always introduce during Constitution Day or an ethics presentation, Henry VI's kill all the lawyers. So I love his rendition of that and explaining to the students what that phrase actually meant. And then someone who I would love to have speak absolutely everywhere, but he's only one person, and I don't know if cloning is possible, is Brian Stevenson. And so
Yes.
it would be great to have Brian Stevenson just cloned so he can come and talk to all of our students.
Yeah, absolutely. I had Brian. Brian's a good friend, and you're right. We ought to just put him on Skype and have everyone have access to Brian.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dean Tobin, how about you? People you've had or people you'd love to have?
So I had Brian Stevenson and Michelle Alexander, and but I think I'm going to go with Sherilyn Eiffel for today. Sherilyn was a faculty member at Maryland and is now head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And besides being an amazing speaker, she epitomizes this connection between law and civic engagement, and the work that I think she's done the last 5 years. Actually, I've been dean that long, so she's probably been there for 7 or 8, is really incredible. But what I would use her for, or somebody like Brian Stevenson, they've taken their brilliance, whatever their smarts are in a particular area, and then they've used that to make change in the area that they're passionate about. And they've identified issues, and they've helped bring them to the fore, and then they've helped those issues become common so that all of us are nodding our heads when we hear Brian Stevenson's name. So I think those are examples of how law has power. And if you want to take this topic we're talking about law having power, if you go and watch Brian Stevenson's TED Talk, you will see him describe the transformation that law had on his life and his trajectory.
Wonderful, thank you. Dean Langan, how about you?
We're very fortunate here at Touro Law Center in that we have one of our former deans, who is Dean Emeritus and also still serves as a faculty member. We, in fact, just celebrated his 90th birthday this past weekend, and that's Howard Glickstein. Howard, while he worked at the Department of Justice in the Civil Rights Division, was instrumental in drafting the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and also the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So to have someone who was there in the thick of it as all of this was going on during the mid-60s is just priceless. He is a wonderful resource. He has been a great mentor, having served for a long period of time as dean, and is a wonderful resource to the students. He continues to be very supportive of all of their activities, is a great speaker on the period during the 1960s while he was at the DOJ, and just the upheaval, what he saw, and how he truly has continued to champion issues related to voting, civil rights, racism in America, and all of those things. He's just very inspirational. And the fact that he's 90, of course, is even more inspirational.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, having those 4 speakers would make a wonderful panel altogether. Kellye, I know we have a lot of questions coming in with so many viewers, so I want to give you a chance to ask some of those.
Sure. Thank you, Ken. We do have a very hot audience today with lots of questions, which we love. And let me summarize a few of the questions in this way. There are many people writing in asking whether our law schools are welcoming applicants and people from various communities. And let me list off the many that I've heard about in the questions. I have questions about, are the formerly incarcerated welcome? Are veterans welcome? Are international students welcome? What about entrepreneurs and people who may not want to practice law in a traditional sense, but want to use law to bolster their current degree or their current work? What about joint degrees, people with PhDs in other fields or wanting to pursue a joint degree? And then also the question is about, what about people with significant work experience already who may want a career shift? Now, my general impression is that we welcome, one of the fun things about law is we welcome all these groups, but I want to just give the deans each a chance to maybe reflect a little bit about how the commitment that they have to civic education and to teaching law broadly, how that intersects with the many different communities the schools are indeed welcoming. Danielle, would you like to start?
Sure, and I've been monitoring the questions as they come through, and one last one came through, are the LGBTQ welcome? And so the answer is, that's the beauty of the rule of law. The rule of law belongs to all of us. And so even those who might have trouble, and I want to specifically talk to the incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, even though you might have trouble with character and fitness when you go before a board, one of the things about learning about law is how important and significant it is to civic engagement. And so even if you didn't hurdle that last rung, the idea is you have access to information and knowledge that is going to make you a better citizen and make you capable in any arena that you find yourself in. So of course, at all of our law schools, LGBTQ, veterans, those who have been incarcerated, and what we try to do is work with you so that you can hurdle the important administrative issues that entails. But yes, the rule of law belongs to everyone, and you are welcome.
I would echo that response. I would also pick up, so I'll say yes to all of that, and I personally know students that have been previously incarcerated, have come to our law school and done quite well. We are a diverse and inclusive law school, so just for all the reasons that Dean Conway mentioned, we welcome students of all different backgrounds. In terms of the question about what if you want to be an entrepreneur and you don't want to engage in litigation, those students are welcome as well. We have a corporate law center under which is our entrepreneurship and community development clinic. Students who participate in that clinic help to advise local startups about all types of legal matters. And by our estimates, our students have given out over $1 million worth of free legal advice. So those students are coming here and they're playing a significant role in the local economy. So we recognize that there's so many different ways to practice law. For my money, that's one of the beautiful things about getting a law degree. It's incredibly flexible. You get so much training in terms of how to analyze and address different types of problems and to solve problems. And you can do that in so many different ways.
And expand a little bit on what Dean Williams said, even if you aren't interested in practicing law in any format,
yes,
there are still the opportunities to use the legal degree. For example, we've had students who, my favorite one was a tequila manufacturer who had no intention of practicing law, but came to law school because he was dealing with vendors, he was dealing with laws, dealing with international shipments and things of that sort. So the opportunity to gain that knowledge and to be able to use that in his own business was valuable to him, despite the fact he had no intention of ever sitting for a bar exam. So we see a lot of individuals who are entrepreneurs. We've had doctors who want to go on and become expert witnesses in their field, things of that sort. So just having a knowledge of the law and how it influences everything really that happens in society is important for a variety of fields.
If I could just maybe give a little bit of practical advice for students too. I mean, I think all of us would have said absolutely to all of those categories. But whenever you're talking about a law school, they do have cultures, they do have ways in which students interact. So I really do encourage students to visit if they can afford to visit law schools. They can go and figure out what the sort of character or feel of a law school is. They should talk to people there. You know, if you're in a particular community, and I don't want to call one out, but find out, are there student groups that support that community? Are there ways in which the school is signaling that it actually cares about that community? Dean Williams talked about the idea of having a business type clinic. So you can identify, does the school have a way in which, if you're interested in a particular area, you can get that out? Are they doing things for other underrepresented groups? So, I think the law, as I think it was Dean Conway said, the rule of law is for everyone. And I think we all believe that and try to design a law school that works that way. But for your own practical benefit, figure out what the law school is like and what its strengths are so that you can identify your particular area and see if you'll feel comfortable at the law school. Obviously, we all want to be welcoming to everyone. But, you can do your own research a little bit and see if this is a place for you.
Good. Thank you. I want to let the viewers know that there are so many questions coming in about how to strategize best for the LSAT, how to prepare for it, especially through the new Khan Academy free LSAT preparation, and many questions about that enrollment journey. Ken and I have decided that in October, on October 21, we'll devote an entire show to that topic of why and how to best position yourself for admission to law school. So I do want to let our viewers know that if your question's not answered today, on October 21st at this same time, we'll have a separate program that will delve deeply into those issues. So you can stay tuned there. I also, of course, want to let everyone know that on the lsac.org website, there's many, many resources on these and many other related questions. So please feel free to consult that in the meanwhile as well. We're always there to help you. I want to turn to a question that a couple of people have written in about, and that is really wanting to hear a little bit more personally from the deans about what motivates you most about civic engagement, and why law for you, and why become a dean, and a little bit about, from your own personal perspectives, how you're seeing the role of law in our world today. And in particular, a couple of our viewers have noted that we do indeed in the United States live in a multicultural country in a very globalized world. And so just also wondering how you think about those intersections in the work that you do. So I know those are big questions. Maybe Dean Williams, would you like to begin? And then we'll ask each of you to respond to any aspect of that you're comfortable.
Sure, Dean. Thank you so much. For me, I think I was a Spanish major. And I graduated, got a bachelor's of science in Spanish. And I did not go to college with the idea of becoming a lawyer. I'd been out of school for 3 years and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And it was really in the jobs I had after college that made me consider more seriously going to law school. And really it was because I saw the law degree as a broad enough degree that I could do whatever I wanted. And so I have to say that I'm lucky that vision was true. I think I worked in almost every area that a lawyer can work in. I've been in a big firm. I've been at the Department of Justice. I worked at a national public interest organization where I had the opportunity to argue in front of the United States Supreme Court. And then I left that world and came to the Legal Academy because I wanted to spend more time thinking and writing about the issues that I cared a lot about. The dean position was something that, again, not something I planned. We were in a situation, a personnel matter came up with the previous dean, and we needed somebody to step into that position on an interim basis. I applied and I was accepted. And I found out within a week that I really loved the job. And what I loved about it was it sort of harkened back to my practice skills. Like Dean Tobin, I had, when I was at the National Women's Law Center, in addition to doing appellate litigation, I also worked on Capitol Hill, and I was talking to lawmakers and folks in executive branch agencies, and had to work with coalitions and all different kinds of folks. And so for me, I mean, it was very similar. And I get the opportunity to continue to serve. Now I'm serving my institution, and we are a very mission-focused institution, just as the law schools that are represented here. We're focused, we believe very strongly in our community and our connections. We're deeply connected to our community. And we see our mission as preparing our students to go out and be leaders in the world and pursuing justice.
Dean Tobin?
So my path was really about wanting to make a difference in the world. And I know that sounds corny, but it really was how I ended up where I was. I worked right out of college. I worked on a presidential campaign, not a very successful one, but I learned the benefit of really putting hard work into something you believed in. And then I went and worked on Capitol Hill. And what I'd say on Capitol Hill, I really learned, and I talk about this a lot because my wife was a public interest lawyer. And I say, you tried to move pebbles miles, and I tried to move boulders inches. And they're all different ways of making a difference, right? So on Capitol Hill, you're one of 1,000 people trying to get this policy done. And if you succeed, you feel like you've changed the world, but you certainly have changed thousands of people's lives. And if you're a public interest attorney, your effort can make the difference in that person's life. And I think that just has motivated me my whole life. So I went to Capitol Hill. Then I decided I wanted to be a law professor. So I took a career that put me in that direction. And then I saw, as I was doing that work, that there was a contribution for me to make as dean and also being able to make the world a better place. So it is what's motivated me. And I want to just very quickly say one other thing that for law students, we talk a lot about legal scholarship, but a lot of us do legal scholarship to make a difference in the world. So when you were talking about ways we have civic engagement, part of the way we have civic engagement is we write about things. I mean, my career has been writing about campaign finance law. Now I joke and I say I lost. There isn't much campaign finance law anymore, but I write about that because I'm passionate about how it impacts democracy. So there's a path and there's a way in which to put this all together, I think, for everyone, but that was my path.
Great. Dean Langan?
Well, I was a political science major and realized that there weren't many jobs for political scientists once you graduated from college. I had thought about being a lawyer while I was in high school once I figured out that I wasn't going to be a math teacher because I hated calculus. So I found that I really enjoyed advocating positions for individuals that were the underdogs. So I was involved in high school in forensics and things of that sort. So when I got into college and did my political science major, it really did become with the intent that eventually I was going to go to law school, which I did. And then I practiced law for 25 years. I practiced in marital and family law, did a lot of guardian ad litem work as a volunteer in order to represent children who are involved in custody litigation, because again, I saw that group as being an underserved population and in need of legal services. After 25 years, I realized that the time I really was enjoying the most was dealing with young associates who were joining my firm and watching in their successes as they developed skills as lawyers, and was fortunate enough to then transition into legal education. I had no intention of becoming part of leadership at the law schools, but I ended up being tapped for a number of leadership positions, originally as director of the legal writing program at my school in South Florida, eventually became the Associate Dean of Academics, and then moved on to dean positions. And as everybody has said here so far, it's a position I really enjoy. I find that I can have an impact on individual student lives and also an impact on the direction that legal education is headed, and also an impact on the community where the law school is located. So for me, it's really a wonderful combination of using the skills I developed as a practicing lawyer and now having a much broader impact within the community, and I'm enjoying myself.
That's good. When you enjoy yourself, you do even better at what you do. And I always encourage students to find something they love to do and do it with all their hearts. Then most of the rest will take care of itself. Dean Conway, I want to turn to you. You shared a little bit about your military background. I want to also welcome you to share anything else about your own pathway into being a great leader in legal education.
Thank you for that. So I mentioned to my mother when I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a lawyer. And my mother did what a lot of mothers would do, anything they could do to help their little girl's dream come true. So my mother went back to college, finished college as a single parent of 4 kids, and then entered law school at night. And I watched my mom every night studying in those law books, and she was absolutely crazed. And I said, oh my gosh, I think I want to do that. That looks like fun. Even though it was crazy for her, she came alive when she went to law school at the age of 46. And so I saw her and I decided I was going to be just like my mother. And we didn't have much money. And so I got an Army ROTC scholarship to go to college. And I went to college thinking, I got to get through these 4 years because I got to get to law school. And so the Army said, you want to be a lawyer so bad after college? We'll let you go on educational delay, but you got to come serve the Army when you finish. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, serving on active duty as a Judge Advocate General Officer in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I just learned so much about life, about law, about leadership, and about the diplomacy that goes into being an Army lawyer representing the United States of America.
Thank you so much. Ken, let me turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, just wonderful stories. And you know, some folks who go to law school do have lawyers in their family and others don't. And the law can really provide a wonderful pathway for you. And again, I think with the theme of really making a difference. So for our final question, and Dean Williams, since I know you have a speaker tomorrow, I'm going to call on you first. So why don't you each give us a preview of the kind of remarks you will make tomorrow to your students on Constitution Day, or you know, and you may not have one of those programs, but if you did have the floor tomorrow, what will you be saying to your students?
Well, our conversation, we're having a conversation. Professor Murray and I are going to have a conversation about the Supreme Court and the previous term and looking forward to what's coming up. One of the things that I want to talk to her about is the theme of stare decisis. That is the principle that we respect the decisions that have come before. And there are a number of cases that the Supreme Court decided the last term where they've called into question the extent to which they will continue to recognize decisions that have come before. And to those of you who are just thinking about law school, that may not sound like a really big deal, but it's a huge deal. The law is one of the reasons the rule of law is a rule of law is there's an expectation of certainty. And so you can't have the courts just sort of flip-flopping, you know, from decision to decision. There's a level of certainty that we expect out of the law. So I'm expecting that to be a pretty lively discussion. And we're going to open it up to audience participation, which is something that we haven't typically done in the past. So I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be a nice interactive discussion, and it'll be hopefully the kind of thing that will inspire people to become engaged.
Yeah, stare decisis is a great subject for Constitution Day. That's wonderful. Dean Langan, how about you for your address?
Yeah. We do not have a formal program tomorrow, but some of the conversations that we're planning on having will deal with participation. That what makes our country great and what makes it operate as a democracy is that people participate, and that all of us have an obligation to do that regardless of whether we think we make a difference or not. Simply talking to someone else, talking to someone on the street, someone you may meet on the train when I go into the city for meetings, when you tell them what you do and they start asking you questions, we're engaging in civic education. We're showing that the Constitution works and that our democracy works. So those are some of the conversations we'll be having, that as law students, as lawyers, we participate in the process, and we want others to participate similarly, regardless of what their views may be. That by doing that, we all have a voice at the table, and we can do great things together.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dean Tobin?
So I'm going to be spending Constitution Day with the Access to Justice Commission in Maryland, and that to me is sort of an important component of Constitution Day. But what I really want to say while we're leaving these students is, you know, it almost sounds like we've lectured to some of you, and I've got to say your generation is a lot better than my generation in this passion about civic engagement. I was just reading a Washington Post article today that talked about the high number of students, of young people who are caring about climate change and working to make change in that area. You pick the area that you're interested in, but your generation understands a lot better than a lot of people who came before you about the fact that your voice can make a difference. And I just leave you with, if you want to make a difference in the world, law can be an incredible way to do that.
Yeah, great, wonderful. And Dean Conway?
We're hosting the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. They'll be in session for Constitution Day. And I always leave every student, every person I meet with this, that we all defend the United States Constitution. We all promote the rule of law, and we all must represent the most vulnerable among us.
Wonderful, thank you. Wonderful message to end on. Deans, we thank you. Kellye, let me turn it over to you for our closing.
Okay, Ken, thank you so much. And Deans, I join Ken in thanking you. You're inspirational. It makes me want to go back to law school when I hear you. And I want to let our viewers know that I hope you'll tune in with us next month. As noted, it is on October 21st. That's always on a Monday and at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will tackle this topic of how to go to law school, tips for the LSAT, tips for applying to law school, how we can help ease that enrollment journey. And I want to remind you all that today our law schools do so many different things, not only the JD degree, but also LLMs and also many master's degrees for those of you who may want to blend a current career with study in law. And then finally, let me know too, we'll talk a little bit about online legal education that day. Ken, you've been a great leader at iLaw and helping us understand the potential of that. So with that, I hope to see everyone on October 21st. And again, Ken and Deans, thank you for being with us today. And in the meanwhile, let's all keep working for law and justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kellye.
Have a good evening.
Good night.